All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sang Lee, and I'm the CEO and founder of Darcmatter. We're an award-winning global fintech company providing a seamless connection process between GPs, fund managers, and investors from all around the world. Before we dive deep into our blockchain project, I want to go through kind of the evolution of the industry. As many of you already know, we're here to talk about security tokens, so we'll talk about securities, and we'll talk about investments. So as I briefly mentioned, we provide an automated workflow between all fund management opportunities, such as hedge funds, venture capital, and private equity, to connect seamlessly with investors from over 26 countries right now. But to take a step back, I want to talk about why we focused on the alternative investment industry. If you take a look to this slide, this is basically the pyramid of all wealth management products that exist in the world today. And when we talk about traditional investments, we talk about stocks, bonds, and cash. And then now we're adding crypto and all these new things into the bucket, which actually creates more complications. So what we want to do is create a seamless interaction process so that you can access anything you want. You could probably buy cash, stocks, and bonds pretty readily. You can go into a bank and ask them to buy it. But everything else, which is actually a massive industry, is pretty much not for the lay person or not for a non-institutional investor. So everything that are alternatives are basically, besides the bottom, everything is considered an alternative investment. Where we really focus is what we call the core alternative investment opportunities. And those are hedge funds, venture capital, and private equity, like I mentioned before. And there's a problem that's actually occurring. So today, we estimate asset management and total wealth under management to be about 70 to 75 trillion. It's a pretty rough number. But at the same time, investor wealth is anticipated to breach $220 trillion in the next 2 years, most of it coming from Asia Pacific. Alternative assets as a core component of portfolios is becoming increasingly more important because of the way markets are correlated. So you have this massive industry that it's going to grow to $15 trillion, but how do you really access it? And how can you make it a much more seamless process where things like Madoff and things like Ponzi schemes can occur, and I, as a regular investor, can also access these new opportunities and top-tier managers? There's huge problems right now, even though the industry is more than $15 trillion. Like I mentioned before, there's huge lack of transparency. All of the paperwork is literally still being done with paperwork. And the innovations that we've actually seen in this industry in all wealth management is DocuSign. That's about the extent of innovation that we've seen in particularly offline wealth management products. At the same time, there are evolving global regulations that's creating worse issues for transparency because investors and managers don't really understand what's happening at any given time. And we'll talk about how blockchain can help us solve that problem. The third is what I mentioned earlier before. Everything is being done offline. I need a personal advisor, or I need a relationship to get into these new types of investment opportunities. Why hasn't this been digitized, or why haven't we created platforms to make this process just generally better? And there's a consistent increase in compliance costs, which is being passed on to investors. When I, as an investor, are paying into a wealth management product, I'm effectively paying for the administration and obviously investments and returns. But because of 1, 2, and 3, costs keep increasing, and investor accessibility is becoming more and more difficult actually every day. So every time there's a rule that protects an investor, like AIFMD, and Europe changes a different rule, and Korea changes a different rule, it actually becomes more expensive and less transparent for investors because everything is being done offline without coordination. So what have we done, very briefly, just to talk about how we took the first step in the last 3 years to basically build a platform that allows a lot of these issues that we were talking about to disappear. We provide a direct connection. It's the simplest thing possible. Don't intermediate the transactions, and create a direct connection between top managers and investors, whether they're individuals or advisors or family offices. KYC AML. We talk about it in a very complicated way, and we talk about our privacy issues. It's actually not that hard as a technology solution. Right now, doing wealth management is a lot like going to different doctors. You have to do KYC AML every single time, and people don't really understand why. Smart matching of LPs and GPs. There's so many different opportunities, but I, as an investor, if I'm not a professional investor, I need some help. And I can do that with technology versus having an advisor or somebody that's always constantly telling me or trying to pitch me a product. Automated workflow and paperwork, I mentioned it to you before. There's probably 4 sets of documents that have to get executed before you even think about funding an investment opportunity, like a subscription doc, PPM, suitability. We've automated all of that workflow. And we're the only platform in the world right now that's providing cross-border investment flow. So we have offices in Shanghai and Seoul, and we're going to be opening offices in Hong Kong as well to allow for both US investors to be able to access new opportunities there, but at the same time having those investors being able to seamlessly access New York City, the financial hub of the world, as if it's right in their neighborhood as well. What do we also do? This is kind of the harder part of the business and all about all wealth management opportunities, the due diligence. We can provide efficiency and security and trust, but at the same time, the business has a core responsibility to both funds as well as its investors to be able to do this. What we're really excited about, and I'll talk about the core blockchain solution in a little bit, is that all of this becomes suddenly very easy for us to accomplish once we're on the blockchain. And I'll talk about how that actually occurs. So this is just a brief snapshot of what we've done over the last 3.5 years. We have over 1,000 fund manager pipeline. We probably have the largest critical mass of any other platform. Majority of our investors are advisors and high net worth individuals, but that's because we historically had a US focus. When we opened up the Asian offices and we're expanding into different regions, institutions and family offices have become another core component of our business growth. So some of the customers that we are using our platform, some advisors, as well as some institutions internationally that are using it to source, that are using it to do due diligence and find new investment opportunities. And we used to think that it was a US problem. So we said, let's go ask people all around the world whether this is a real problem or not, or whether there's value. And people came back and basically said, yes, this is a global problem and nobody actually wants to solve it. Most likely because there's a lot of money to be made in not solving it. And 2, it's not easy. It takes a really, really long time. When we first went out after the Jobs Act to talk to new fund managers in 2012, 2013, and say, let's go online, guys, a lot of people told us to leave the office, right? Because it was illegal. For the very, very long time, it was actually illegal for hedge funds to have websites because it was considered advertising. So now, fast forward to 2016, 2017, technology is the new name of the game. In 2017, 2018, it's how do we scale in a different speed with blockchain? And how do we accomplish different things that we couldn't do as just a centralized digital platform? So 26 countries right now. We have 4 offices, like I mentioned before, New York, Ukraine, Seoul, and Shanghai. And we're continuing to expand. So if anybody has partnership ideas or is interested in working with us, come find me, please, afterwards. So we'll talk about the blockchain, right? This is what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about security tokens. But more importantly, there's a natural transition gap that has to occur before we talk about, tokenizing all securities and all assets, right? I mentioned the paperwork, the inefficiency. All of that has to actually transfer into a smart contract capability before we can talk about whether this hedge fund is going to ride in a token or that venture capital fund will ride in a token. We have to understand the underlying implications between the relationship of the counterparties in a much more robust way than we have right now. Before there was a talk about commodities and stocks. It's completely doable because more or less those things are normalized and they look pretty much the same. So you can tokenize it much faster. But if you're actually talking about the world of all wealth management products, it will take some time. I'll show you a brief video of the platform in action, and then we'll talk about the blockchain.
Darcmatter is a global fintech platform that streamlines the capital raising process for asset managers and provides investors with direct and transparent access to alternative investments. Investors can easily register to browse all the investment opportunities efficiently and utilize robust selection tools to aid in the discovery of new investment opportunities. The deal room is the primary point of interaction between an investor and the asset manager. Investors can monitor all engagement activity, chat and request access to fund documents, and directly invest. Qualified asset managers are provided with a number of tools. The Asset Manager dashboard updates all investment interest the fund receives instantly. Managing potential investors is both efficient and effective with Darcmatter. Readily access investor profiles, manage requests, and monitor progress towards investments from a single page. Visit www.darcmatter.com for more information on how we use our platform technology to create access and transparency within.
So why did we choose the blockchain? If we had a business, we were already doing it, why we were moving to the blockchain? So two things actually occur when you run a centralized platform that clears trades or connects counterparties. You become the intermediary, and you become responsible for these things occurring in a non-scalable fashion, which means we can only scale to a certain amount of funds or a certain amount of investors without running into the same issues that financial services faces today, which is a non-scalable issue. And at the same time, it faces huge risks in terms of providing new due diligence and efficiency tools that are still kind of tied to the original way of doing business. So transparency of record keeping is something huge that we don't have in the industry today because it's being done by different counterparties. We're building a permissioned engine, so you'll still have the privacy of a private blockchain, but the information itself will be hashed and encrypted and stored in the public blockchain so that you know it's an immutable record, and you can pull it down with your own private keys, like an investor report, or my positions, or my portfolio. The second thing is everything is bilateral trades right now, so I don't really care if I run away with $10 billion because I have the $10 billion and I don't need the ecosystem to be healthy. What happens when you enter into the blockchain is the overarching system has to operate together, and you have to enhance the security and transparency for fund management to actually survive and occur. So we have the new capability that doesn't exist today. Risk of human error is completely decreased because you don't have people that are checking these records. This is all done through smart contracts and on the blockchain. And then the last thing, which is really interesting and something that we're actively pursuing as well, is discrete value parcels for something that only had you had to invest at least $1 million or $10 million. And then now you can create secondary markets around pretty much any wealth management product and create accessibility across the world. It was going to take a long time, so I'll skip the animation. So this is kind of some of the specific use cases that we have right now that seemingly doesn't seem like rocket science, but it cannot be done with the technology or the systems as they exist today and can only occur with the implementation of blockchain. And I'll let you guys take a picture of that. So now these are just specific use cases that we're rolling out on the Darcmatter platform. Everything that we're kind of doing through the digital technology we have today can be further enhanced and far more useful with the blockchain and implementation of the blockchain. Just the team, my CTO is here as well. So we have diverse backgrounds, both from financial technology, banking. I also helped on the regulatory side for the Jobs Act, so I'm very familiar with the things that are happening right now, as well as marketing experience so that we can provide the same amount of visibility and transparency into the industry that we want to do for our customers. We are in the middle of our public pre-sale. Middle is kind of a weird word. We raised over $25 million. We have 2 days left. Hashed is a core investor in our company, and we're continuing to run the public pre-sale for 2 more days, and then it's going to be closed off. So if you do have any questions or any interest, we use 9 different messaging apps, so you can contact us with anything that you want to use up here. Thank you very much.